The young billionaire gets on a bus and sees two poor girls with a sign. They say, "Help us save our mommy." But the photo they show leaves him in shock. Colt Harlan stared at the city from the window of his penthouse in Hudson Tower. Manhattan stretched out at his feet like a chessboard he masterfully dominated. The orange sky of dawn reflected off the glass buildings, but he barely noticed the beauty of the scene. It was just another day following a precise schedule. 28 years old, a billionaire, CEO of Harlan Enterprises. His empire was built with surgical precision, with no room for error or sentimentality. Forbes called him the ice-cold prodigy, a business genius who never smiled in photos. As he shaved with methodical movements, Colt observed his reflection in the mirror. Grey-blue eyes, perfectly trimmed dark brown hair, a defined jawline. A face that graced business magazines but rarely showed any emotion other than relentless seriousness. Something was different that morning, though. A restlessness he couldn't name, like an annoying hum with no clear origin. He had slept the exact 7 hours scheduled, his diet was impeccable, his projects were on schedule. Still, a strange feeling bothered him. "Mr. Harlan, your coffee is ready and the car is waiting downstairs." The voice of Reynolds, his assistant, came through the intercom. "I've cancelled the car today, Reynolds." A brief silence on the other end of the line. "Pardon me, sir. Has there been a change in your schedule?" "No, I just won't be using the car today." Another silence, this one longer. In 3 years of working for Colt, Reynolds had never received an instruction like that. Colt turned off the intercom before more questions could come. He couldn't even explain it to himself. He just felt he needed to do something different, go off script, breathe air that wasn't filtered by the state-of-the-art system in his car or his office. He dressed as usual, a dark grey Italian suit, a white shirt, no tie. The only unusual element was the decision to grab a casual jacket from the back of his closet, something he rarely wore. He needed to look a little less like himself. He went down in the private elevator, ignoring the surprised look from the doorman when, instead of heading to the garage door, he went to the main exit. "Good morning, Mr. Harlan. Shall I call a cab?" "No, thank you, Marcus." The autumn morning air hit his face. New York was already pulsating at this hour. People rushing, cafes opening, the constant noise that was the city's soundtrack. Colt stood still for a moment, just watching. How many times had he really looked at the street in front of his own building? Without a clear plan, he began to walk. He turned left, then right, following an instinct he didn't know he possessed. After a few blocks, he saw a bus stop where several people were waiting. A bus was approaching. A bus. When was the last time he'd ridden one? Before college, maybe. Before his first company at 19. Before his first million at 21. Something compelled him. When the bus stopped, Colt got on. The driver looked at him, waiting for payment. Colt realized he had no idea how much a bus ticket cost nowadays. "It's $3, buddy," the driver said impatiently. Colt took out his wallet and handed him a $20 bill. "Keep the change." The driver's eyes widened, but he said nothing. Colt walked down the aisle, feeling the curious stares. His suit was worth more than the monthly salary of most people on board. He sat near the back, by a window. The bus started moving again, jolting through the streets. It was noisy, crowded, and strangely comforting. Real people, real lives, without filters or programmed agendas. He watched an old woman holding shopping bags, a teenager with headphones bobbing his head to the rhythm of a song, a middle-aged man reading a newspaper, small fragments of existences that would normally never cross his path. The bus stopped several times. People got off, others got on. Colt didn't know where he was going, and surprisingly, it didn't bother him. For the first time in years, he wasn't in control, and there was something liberating about it. After about 30 minutes, when the bus had already left Manhattan and entered Queens, something caught his attention. Two little girls got on, accompanied by an elderly woman who appeared to be their grandmother. The older one couldn't have been more than 5, with curly blonde hair and huge eyes. The younger one, maybe 4, held her sister's hand tightly, but what really caught his eye was the sign the older girl was carrying, handmade, with colorful and uneven letters, clearly written by a child. Help us save our mommy. The girls sat a few seats ahead. Colt couldn't look away from the sign. There was something in that message that pierced his bubble of indifference, cultivated over years. "Grandma, how many people have we seen today?" the older one asked. "Many, Ellie. But we have to keep trying," the woman replied in a tired voice. "Mommy is going to get better, right?" The younger one's voice was almost a whisper. "Of course she is, Willa. We just need some help." Colt found himself leaning forward, trying to hear more of the conversation. The girls, Ellie and Willa, turned the sign so other passengers could see. Some people looked with compassion, others pretended not to notice. When the bus stopped again, Ellie stood up and, with a courage that surprised Colt, began to walk down the aisle, showing the sign. "Please, our mommy is very sick," she said, in a trembling but determined voice. "We need to buy medicine." Some passengers gave a few coins or small bills. Others looked out the window, avoiding eye contact. Colt remained motionless, observing. When Ellie got close to him, she stopped. For some reason, her little eyes fixed on his. "Mister, can you help our mommy?" she asked, holding out the sign. Colt looked at the sign and noticed a photo taped to the corner. A young woman smiling with the two girls. Something about that face sparked a memory. He took the sign to look closer and felt as if he had been punched in the gut. It was Marianne Miller, the same Marianne who had worked in his penthouse for 4 years. The same one he had fired 8 months ago for repeated absences and constant tardiness. The same one whose explanations about family problems he had completely ignored, considering only his strict policy of zero tolerance for inefficiency. Is your mother's name Marianne?" he asked, his voice almost unrecognizable to himself. Ellie nodded energetically. "Yes. Do you know our mommy?" Colt felt something strange in his chest, a tightness, a weight he wasn't used to feeling. Guilt, remorse, emotions that weren't part of his daily vocabulary. "Yes, I know her," he replied, studying the girls' faces. How had he never noticed the resemblance? Had Marianne mentioned daughters? Had he even paid enough attention to know? "She's sick," said Willa, the younger one, joining her sister. "She coughs a lot and is hot." "A fever," Ellie corrected, "and the doctor said she needs expensive medicine, but we don't have enough money." The elderly woman approached. "Girls, don't bother the gentleman." "They're not bothering me," Colt hurried to say. "Actually, I'd like to help. I know Marianne. She worked for me." The woman examined him with suspicion. "You're Colt Harlan?" Colt nodded, surprised to be recognized. "Marianne mentioned your name a few times," the woman said. "I'm Rosa, her mother. I'm taking care of the girls while she tries to recover." "What exactly is wrong with her?" Rosa hesitated, looking at the girls. It started as a flu. She couldn't get proper treatment at first because she didn't have health insurance after she lost her job. Now, the doctors suspect pneumonia. Every word was like a needle. Marianne had lost her health insurance when he fired her. She was sick, without resources, with 2 small daughters. "Where do you live?" Colt asked, standing up. "Why?" The suspicion in Rosa's tone was evident. "Because I want to help. I really do." After a moment of hesitation, Rosa gave him the address, a modest neighborhood in Queens. "We're getting off at the next stop," she said. "If you really want to help, you can come with us." Minutes later, Colt found himself getting off the bus in a neighborhood he had never visited. Old buildings, cracked sidewalks, a reality completely different from the glass and steel skyscrapers that were part of his world. He followed Rosa and the girls for a few blocks until they reached a small brick apartment building. They climbed 3 flights of stairs, the elevator was broken, to an apartment on the 3rd floor. The contrast with his penthouse couldn't have been greater. The apartment was small, with worn but clean furniture. There were drawings by the girls taped to the walls, a few plants in makeshift pots, and a sense of home that, despite its simplicity, made Colt realize how cold and impersonal his own residence was. "Mommy?" Ellie called as she entered. "We brought a man who says he knows you." A coughing fit came from one of the bedrooms. Rosa motioned for Colt to wait and went to check. The girls stayed in the living room, watching him with curiosity. "Are you really going to help our mommy?" Willa asked, her big eyes full of hope. Before Colt could answer, Rosa returned. "She's awake, but very weak," she said. "I mentioned your name and she was surprised." Colt followed Rosa into a small bedroom. The sight of Marianne shocked him. She was lying in bed, visibly thinner, her face pale except for the flushed cheeks from fever. Her dark hair, once always impeccably neat, was spread across the pillow. She breathed with difficulty, and even the simple act of turning her head to look at him seemed to require immense effort. "Mr. Harlan?" Her voice was just a hoarse whisper. "What are you doing here?" Colt felt something break inside him. The efficient and discreet woman who had worked in his home for 4 years was reduced to this fragile, sick version, and he couldn't help but feel he had contributed to it. "I met your daughters on the bus," he explained, approaching the bed. "Marianne, why didn't you come to me when you got sick?" She tried to laugh, but the sound turned into a cough. "After the way my job ended, I didn't think you'd care." Every word was a silent accusation, and Colt knew he deserved it. "You need to go to the hospital now," he said, his voice regaining some of its usual firmness. "I can't afford it," she replied simply. "I'll pay for everything." Rosa, who was watching from the doorway, intervened. "We don't need charity." "It's not charity," Colt replied, without taking his eyes off Marianne. "It's the least I can do." Marianne studied his face for a moment, as if searching for something there. Whatever she saw seemed to convince her, because she nodded slightly. "The girls, they'll come with us," Colt decided, looking at Ellie and Willa, who were peeking through the bedroom door. "If you'll allow it." Rosa started to protest, but Marianne interrupted her with a weak gesture. "It's okay, Mom. They'll be scared if they can't see me." The next few minutes were a flurry of action. Colt called a private ambulance, using his name to ensure immediate service. While they waited, he knelt to the girls, level. "Your mum needs to go to the hospital to get better. Do you want to go with her?" Ellie and Willa nodded eagerly. "I'll take care of everything," he promised, more to the children than to the adults in the room. "Your mum will get the best doctors." When the paramedics arrived, Marianne was placed on a stretcher. The girls watched everything with wide eyes. "Can we go with Mommy?" asked Ellie, holding Willa's hand. "Of course," Colt replied. "I'll go with you." Rosa handed him a small backpack. "Clean clothes and their stuffed animals. They'll need them." On the way to the ambulance, Rosa held Colt's arm. Why are you doing this?" Colt didn't have a ready answer. For the first time, he was acting on impulse, moved by something he couldn't rationally explain. "Because it's the right thing to do," he answered simply. Rosa studied him for a moment. "Take good care of them. All of them." In the ambulance, Colt sat with Ellie and Willa while the paramedics attended to Marianne. The girls were silent, watching the equipment with a mix of fascination and fear. "This helps Mommy breathe better," Colt explained, pointing to the oxygen mask. "And this shows her heart beating." "Just like in the hospital cartoon," said Willa, seeming a little calmer. At the hospital, the medical team confirmed the diagnosis: severe pneumonia, aggravated by the lack of proper treatment at the beginning. Without potent antibiotics and intensive care, the situation could have become fatal in a matter of days. "She'll need to be admitted," the doctor explained. "Probably for a week, maybe more." "Do whatever is necessary," Colt instructed. "Spare no expense. I want the best treatment available." While he filled out the forms and provided his credit card information, a nurse approached with Ellie and Willa. "The girls are asking when they can see their mother." "I'm done here," Colt said, putting his wallet away. He looked at the girls. "Shall we go see how she is?" Marianne was settled in a private room. She was sleeping, connected to monitors and receiving intravenous medication. Colt lifted the girls one at a time so they could give their mother a kiss on the forehead. "Why isn't she waking up?" asked Willa, worried. "The medicine makes her sleep so she can get better faster," Colt explained, surprised at himself for finding the right words to reassure them. Hours passed. Colt bought snacks and juice for the girls at the hospital cafeteria. His phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Reynolds marked the board, business partners, everyone wanting to know where he was, why he had disappeared without notice. He silenced the device. None of it seemed important now. Ellie and Willa eventually fell asleep, one on each side of him, in the small armchair in the room. Colt remained motionless, afraid of waking them. He looked at Marianne's sleeping face and at the girls beside him. A simple children's sign had completely diverted the course of his day, and perhaps his life. That restlessness he had felt in the morning, that inexplicable impulse that had made him break his routine. It was as if something bigger than himself had been guiding his steps to that bus, to those girls, to this moment. For the first time in years, Colt Harlan cried. Silent tears that no one witnessed, except for a nurse who came in to check the monitors and quietly left issues, giving him privacy. In the silence of the hospital room, something inside him had irrevocably changed. The bubble of control, goals, and isolation in which he lived had been burst by two little girls with a poorly made sign, and for the first time, instead of trying to rebuild that bubble, Colt Harlan just wanted to let it go. Morning arrived with the typical hospital bustle, nurses changing shifts, doctors making rounds, the scent of weak coffee in the hallway. Colt woke up with an ache in his back. He had spent the entire night in the room's armchair, with Ellie and Willa sleeping on either side of him. He looked at Marianne, who was still sleeping. Her fever had gone down during the night, which was a good sign. The girls were also still asleep, exhausted from the tension of the previous day. Colt moved carefully not to wake them and went to the window. Dr. Larson, the doctor in charge of the case, entered the room silently. "How is she?" Colt whispered. "Better than we expected," the doctor replied in the same tone. "Can we talk outside?" In the hallway, Dr. Larson consulted his tablet. "The pneumonia is severe, but she's responding well to the antibiotics. The tests show improvement in her lung function, although it's still far from ideal. How long until she makes a full recovery? It's hard to say for sure. At least 2 weeks of hospitalization, then a few more for recovery at home. She was very weak when she arrived." Colt nodded, processing the information. "And the girls? Are they at risk?" "Her pneumonia isn't contagious at this stage, but they might have been exposed before. It would be wise to have them checked out as well." "Please do that today." The doctor made a few notes. "Mr. Harlan, may I ask what your relationship is to the patient?" The question caught Colt off guard. What was his relationship with Marianne, anyway? Boss, ex-boss. He had never thought of her beyond her function in his home. "She worked for me for 4 years, he answered simply. The doctor studied him for a moment, clearly curious as to why a billionaire would be so involved with a former employee, but he remained professional. "Well, she's lucky to have someone willing to help. Many in her situation don't get that opportunity." The words hung in the air as the doctor walked away. Colt returned to the room and found Ellie awake, rubbing her eyes. "Good morning," he said, trying to sound casual, as if spending the night in a hospital with 2 children was something he did regularly. "Is Mommy awake yet?" she asked, looking at her mother. "Not yet, but the doctor said she's getting better." Ellie nodded, as if she perfectly understood the situation. For a 5-year-old, she showed surprising maturity, probably a result of needing to be strong for her younger sister. "Are you hungry?" Colt asked. Before she could answer, Willa also woke up, immediately asking for their mother. "She's sleeping, but she's getting better," Colt repeated. "Time shall we get some breakfast?" In the hospital cafeteria, watching the girls eat pancakes with chocolate syrup, Colt felt a wave of thoughts wash over him. How many times had Marianne mentioned her daughters? He vaguely remembered requests to leave early, explanations for being late because of problems with the girls. But he had never asked for details, had never really been interested. Employees were replaceable parts in his meticulously organized life. When one left, another came in, simple as that. The people who kept his house running, who prepared his meals, who cleaned his spaces, were practically invisible to him. "Aren't you going to eat?" Willa asked, interrupting his thoughts. "Oh, yes," he replied, looking at his untouched coffee and a plain piece of toast. "I was just thinking a little." "About what?" Ellie had that direct gaze that seemed to see right through him. "About how I never really knew your mother, even though she worked in my house for so long." "Mommy always said you were very busy," Ellie commented, "that you couldn't be bothered." Each word was a small accusation, though spoken without malice. This was how he had presented himself to the world. A man too busy to care about details, about people, about the humanity around him. After breakfast, they returned to the room and found Marianne awake. Her face lit up when she saw her daughters, who ran to hug her carefully. Colt remained at the door, suddenly feeling like an intruder in this family moment. "How are you feeling?" he asked when the girls moved away. "Better," Marianne replied, her voice still weak. "Thank you for everything you're doing." "Don't thank me." The words came out gruffer than he intended. "Please, don't thank me." She looked at him with curiosity but didn't press the issue. The girls started telling her about the pancakes from breakfast, and Colt took the opportunity to leave the room. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. The truth hit him with full force. He had fired a single mother with 2 young daughters because she needed to take care of them. He had cut off her health insurance, her source of income, her stability. And for what? Because she had missed a few days, because she was occasionally late. His phone vibrated again. 27 missed calls, dozens of messages. Colt Harlan's business world was in an uproar over his sudden disappearance. He turned the device off completely. When he returned to the room, Marianne was dozing again, and the girls were drawing with pencils and paper that a nurse had brought. "Look what I made," said Willa, showing a colorful drawing of 3 stick figures, 2 small and 1 large, holding hands. "It's us," she explained. "Taminkar Elise and you taking care of Mommy." Colt looked at the simple drawing and felt a lump in his throat. When was the last time someone had included him in a family picture? When was the last time anyone had even considered his presence as something positive, beyond what his money or power could provide? The nurse came in to check Marianne's vital signs. "Oh, the girls can't stay in the hospital for too long," she informed him gently. "The policy allows visits from children, but not for them to remain for extended periods." Colt nodded, having already anticipated this. "Can I take them to my house tonight? They would be more comfortable there." The nurse glanced at Marianne. The other patient would need to authorize it, being the mother. When Marianne woke up again, Colt explained the situation. "I don't want to be a bother," she said, visibly worried. "My mother can take care of them." "It's no bother," Colt insisted. "My house is too big for one person, and this way they can visit you every day." Marianne hesitated, studying his face. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." For the first time in a long time, Colt was truly sure of something. After getting Marianne's agreement, Colt took the girls to a department store. He bought clothes, shoes, toys, and everything he thought they might need. The girls were ecstatic with the attention and the chance to pick out new things. "Mommy can never buy things like this," Ellie commented while trying on a blue dress. "She always says we need to save money for emergencies." The casual phrase was like a blow. Emergencies like this one, a serious illness that could have been prevented with proper care. Care she couldn't afford after losing her job. At the end of the afternoon, after another visit to Marianne, Colt took the girls to his penthouse. As they entered the private elevator, Ellie and Willa looked at everything with admiration. "It's so high!" Willa exclaimed as the elevator ascended rapidly. The door opened directly into the penthouse entryway. The wide open space, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Manhattan, left the girls momentarily speechless. Ellie took a few hesitant steps, looking around at the elegant furniture, the expensive works of art, the minimalist and impeccable decor. Then, turning to Colt, she asked in a small voice, "Is this where our mum worked?" The simple question hit him like a train. Colt just nodded slightly, unable to speak due to the lump that had formed in his throat. Marianne had spent 4 years taking care of this space, making it flawless for someone who barely noticed her presence. And now her daughters were here, not as visitors, but seeking refuge. "It's very beautiful," Ellie commented politely, but her expression revealed discomfort with the formal environment. "Come, I'll show you where you'll be staying," Colt said, regaining his voice. He led them down the hall to one of the guest rooms. "You can stay together in this room, or each in a separate room if you prefer." "Together," they answered in unison, grabbing each other's hands. The room was spacious, with a king-size bed that seemed enormous for 2 small girls. Willa immediately climbed onto the bed and started jumping, until Ellie reprimanded her with a look. "You can jump," Colt said, smiling. "It's okay. Mommy always says not to touch things in other people's houses," Ellie explained seriously. "This is your house now, at least until your mum gets better," Colt replied. "You can touch everything, jump on the bed, do whatever you want." Willa's eyes widened at the permission, and she resumed her jumping with enthusiasm. Ellie, more cautious, still seemed wary. "I'll order something for dinner," Colt said. "What do you like to eat?" "Pizza," Willa exclaimed immediately. "Willa, we can't order pizza at Mr. Harlan's house," Ellie scolded. "Why not?" Because he probably eats fancy things." Colt couldn't hold back a laugh. "Pizza is perfect. And you can call me Colt, not Mr. Harlan." After ordering the pizzas, Colt showed the rest of the penthouse to the girls. They looked at everything with fascination, especially the giant TV in the living room and the whirlpool tub in the master bathroom. During dinner, sitting at the kitchen table, a space Colt rarely used, preferring to eat in his office or the living room, Ellie suddenly became serious. "It was very sad to see our mum in bed, tired, coughing. Thank you for helping." The simple words, spoken with such sincerity, touched Colt in a way that no praise from executives or positive reviews in the press ever had. He felt a warmth spread through his chest, a strange and almost forgotten sensation. "I should have helped sooner," he replied softly. "Sooner? When?" Willa asked, curious. "When your mum needed to miss work to take care of you, when she was worried, when I didn't understand that there were more important things than schedules." Ellie studied him with those eyes that seemed much older than her 5 years. "Mommy never spoke badly of you. She always said you were a busy and important man." The statement was like a stab. Marianne had been kind to him even after being treated with indifference. He didn't deserve that kindness. After dinner, he helped the girls take a bath and put on their new pajamas. He read them a story, a children's book his assistant had bought in a hurry when he called asking for one, and watched them fall asleep quickly, exhausted from the emotions of the last few days. Sitting in the silent living room, Colt stared at the illuminated city through the window. His life until 2 days ago seemed so distant now. The corporate empire, the meetings, the contracts, the negotiations. It all felt empty compared to Willa's little drawing or Ellie's sincere words. For the first time, he recognized the emptiness of his existence. He had everything money could buy, but nothing that truly mattered. No genuine human connection, no purpose beyond the accumulation of more success, more money, more power. The tears came without warning, silent and heavy. Tears for the lost time, for the people he had ignored, for the life he had built around values that now seemed completely wrong. When he finally went to bed, Colt knew that something fundamental had changed within him. The weight of omission, of all the times he had chosen not to see, not to listen, not to care, was now impossible to ignore, and maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to change. Colt woke to the sound of children's laughter coming from the kitchen. For a moment, he was disoriented. His penthouse had never known such laughter. He checked the clock. 6:47 a.m. Normally, at this hour, he would already be reviewing reports or on a video conference with executives on the other side of the world. He found Ellie trying to make toast while Willa was spreading jelly on practically everything except the bread. "We wanted to make breakfast," Ellie explained, with a serious expression that didn't match her 5-year-old face. "Mommy always makes it for us." "That's a great idea," Colt replied, grabbing a cloth to wipe the jelly dripping onto the counter. "But next time you can call me to help." "You were sleeping," said Willa. "Say Mommy says we shouldn't wake up adults when they're sleeping." The mention of rules and routines, the structure Marianne had created for her daughters, even in difficult conditions, triggered something in Colt's memory, a distant, almost forgotten memory. As he helped the girls prepare a proper breakfast, his mind wandered to a small apartment in Detroit. He was 6, maybe 7. The refrigerator was almost empty, the constant sound of dripping leaks when it rained, the smell of mold on the walls. "Are you sad?" Willa's voice brought him back to the present. "No," he lied, "just thinking." "You look sad," she insisted, with that raw honesty only children possess. During breakfast, he watched the girls interact, taking care of each other. Ellie making sure Willa ate properly, Willa making her sister smile with silly comments. It was a familiar dance he had never experienced. Later, while the girls watched cartoons in the living room, Colt sat in his office but couldn't concentrate on work. Instead, his thoughts kept returning to the past, a place he rarely visited voluntarily. His father had left when Colt was 5, without explanation, without goodbyes. His mother worked 2 jobs, leaving before dawn and returning when he was already almost asleep. Little Colt learned early to fend for himself, not to bother, not to make noise, not to have needs. "Be strong, be independent," his mother would say on the rare nights she was home. "No one is going to take care of you in this world. You have to take care of yourself." And he learned. Oh, how he learned. "Colt." Ellie was at the office door. "Can we visit Mommy now?" The question pulled him from his memories again. Of course. "Let's get ready." At the hospital, Marianne looked a little better. Still weak, still pale, but her eyes had more life. The girls ran to hug her, excitedly telling her about Colt's house, the giant television, and the breakfast with jelly. "I hope they're not being any trouble," Marianne said, looking at Colt with concern. "Not at all," he replied sincerely. While the girls showed drawings they had made for their mother, Colt watched the interaction. There was so much intimacy there, so much unreserved love. It was something he had never known. At 16, he had started working while still in school. At 18, he got a partial scholarship to college and worked 3 jobs to cover the rest. At 21, he launched his first startup. At 25, he sold it for an amount that changed his life forever. At every stage, the lesson was the same. Keep your distance, be efficient, don't get attached. People were variables in an equation, not connections to be nurtured. That mindset had turned him into a business success and a human disaster. How many relationships had he sabotaged? How many friendships had he let cool? How many employees like Marianne had he treated as replaceable parts? "Can I sit on your lap?" Willa asked, interrupting his thoughts. Without waiting for an answer, she was already climbing onto his leg. The simple, trusting gesture, the complete absence of hesitation, surprised him. When was the last time someone had approached him like that, with no agenda, no fear, no ulterior motives? Back at the penthouse, after the hospital visit, Colt prepared a snack for the girls. Ellie wanted to help, so he lifted her up so she could reach the counter. "Mommy always lets us help," she explained. "How she says that's how we learn." "Your mother is very wise," Colt commented. "What's wise?" Willa asked. "It means she knows important things." "Like what?" "Like how to love you, how to teach you useful things, how to be a good person." Later, as he put the girls to bed, Colt found himself telling a story without a book, something he made up on the spot, about 2 little explorers who saved magical animals. The girls listened, fascinated, asking for more details, correcting parts of the story, actively participating. When they finally fell asleep, Colt remained sitting on the edge of the bed, watching them, 2 little lives that, in just a few days, had torn down walls he had built over decades. The silence of his life, a silence he had always considered productive, necessary, now seemed empty and sterile compared to the joyful chaos that Ellie and Willa had brought. He stood up and walked to the window. The city sparkled outside, imposing and cold. His empire, his refuge, his prison. For so many years, Colt had believed that distance was strength, that independence was a virtue, that efficiency was everything. He had built walls so high around himself that he didn't even realize how alone he was inside them. Now, looking at the sleeping girls, he felt an almost physical need for closeness, not just with them, but with life itself. To be present, truly present, not just occupying space. To connect, not just exist in parallel. The lonely boy from Detroit, who learned too early not to need anyone, finally understood what he had lost along the way. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to get it back. A week passed since Marianne's admission to the hospital. The doctors, surprised by her recovery, reduced the antibiotics and began planning her discharge. Colt had established a routine with the girls, breakfast together, a visit to the hospital, afternoon activities, dinner, and stories before bed. That morning, when they arrived at the hospital, they found Marianne sitting up in bed instead of lying down. Her hair, once lifelessly spread across the pillow, was combed into a simple braid. There was color in her cheeks, not the feverish flush of the first few days, but a healthy tone that made her eyes seem more alive. "Mommy, you're sitting up," Willa exclaimed, running to hug her. "I'm feeling much better today, sweetie," Marianne replied, kissing the top of her daughter's head. Ellie approached more cautiously, studying her mother as if looking for signs that this improvement might be temporary. "Are you still sick?" "Yes, but I'm getting better." "Doctor, Larson said I can go home in a few days." Coltymine, who had stayed behind carrying the girls' backpacks filled with books and toys, felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. Relief because Marianne was getting better, apprehension because it meant the end of the current situation. The girls would go home with their mother, and would he go back to his old life? That idea, once so natural, now seemed strangely empty. "That's great news," he said, placing the backpacks on the small sofa in the room. Marianne watched him with curiosity. "How are you three getting along?" "Fine," he replied. At the same time, Willa exclaimed, "It's super fun." "Colt took us to the museum yesterday," Ellie informed her. "We saw huge dinosaurs." "And he bought us ice cream," Willa added. 3 scoops, Marianne laughed, a sound Colt realized he had never heard before. In the 4 years she worked in his house, he couldn't remember ever seeing her truly smile, not in that carefree, genuine way. "It seems like you're having fun," she commented, with a look that Colt couldn't quite decipher. The girls spent the next half hour telling their mother about their adventures over the past few days. Eventually, a nurse came to take Ellie and Willa for a short tour of the hospital, part of a program for children with family members in the hospital. When they were alone, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. Colt realized that despite Marianne having worked in his house for so long, they had never really talked. "Thank you," she said finally, "for taking care of them, for all of this." She made a gesture that encompassed the private room, the state-of-the-art equipment, the fresh flowers on the table. "Don't thank me," he replied, sitting in the chair next to the bed. "Please." Marianne studied him for a moment. "You've changed." The observation caught him off guard. "How so?" "You seem different, more present." Colt didn't know how to respond. Instead, he asked the question that had been on his mind. "Why did you never tell me about your daughters?" "The whole time you worked for me?" Marianne adjusted the pillow behind her back. "You never asked." The simple answer hit him like a slap. It was true. He had never asked her anything personal, nor any other employee. People came and went from his life without leaving a trace, or so he thought. And what was it like raising the girls alone? The question slipped out before he could think. A tired smile appeared on Marianne's face. "Hard, very hard, but you do what you have to do, don't you?" "Was it always just you?" "From the beginning," she looked out the window. "Their father disappeared when he found out I was pregnant with Ellie. I was 22, no degree, working as a waitress. When Willa was born 2 years later, things got even more complicated." "Same father?" "Yes, he came back, promised he had changed, that he would stand by me. 3 months after Willa was born, he disappeared again, this time for good." "I'm sorry," Colt said, feeling the inadequacy of the words. "Pass, it was a long time ago, almost 5 years." She looked back at him. "At first, I didn't think I could do it. I had 2 small children, bills piling up, and no one to help me. But you keep going, don't you? At least when you have kids, you have no choice." Colt thought about his own life, the choices he had, the doors that money opened, the problems that power solved. And yet, he had never known the kind of strength he saw in Marianne. How did you manage, raising 2 children alone, working, handling everything? One day at a time, many sleepless nights, many tears when they weren't looking. She shrugged. "I worked 3 jobs for a while. I left Ellie with neighbors, then in cheap daycares. When I got the job at your house, and it was like winning the lottery. The pay was good, the hours were more stable. And then I fired you." The words came out heavy, laden with guilt. "You were following company rules. I was missing a lot of work." Why were you missing so much in those last few months? Marianne hesitated, as if deciding how much to reveal. And I started coughing in January. Nothing serious, I thought it was just a cold one, but it didn't go away. I went to the doctor when I still had the job. He prescribed antibiotics, but I didn't fully recover. After I lost the job, I couldn't afford appointments anymore. Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you explain? I tried, she replied softly. Third, remember that morning in March? I asked to speak with you privately. Colt frowned, trying to remember. Vaguely, he recalled Marianne waiting near his office, looking nervous. He was late for a meeting, and he dismissed her. I didn't want to seem like I was asking for special treatment, she continued. I know how much you value efficiency, punctuality. And honestly, I thought I would get better soon. I just needed a little more time. The weight of those words, the pride, the dignity, the naive hope that things would get better on their own, made Colt feel even more guilty. And after I lost my job, I got some temporary work. Cleaning, mostly. No benefits. Paid by the day. Things got tough. I didn't want to ask for help. I just needed time. She repeated the phrase like a mantra. Until I couldn't get out of bed anymore. My mother was getting desperate. The girls were scared. It was their idea to make the sign. A sign that changed everything, Colt murmured. Marianne watched him for a moment. Fire, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you get on that bus? It doesn't seem like your style. The question made him smile slightly. It's not, is it? Honestly, I don't know. I woke up with this restlessness, like something was wrong, out of place. I needed to get out, to breathe, to do something different. Destiny, perhaps, she suggested, a hint of humor in her voice. I don't believe in destiny, he replied automatically, then stopped. Or at least I didn't. A comfortable silence settled between them. Not the awkward silence from before, but something calmer, as if an invisible barrier had been removed. They really like you, Marianne said after a while. Especially Willa. She's always been more open, more trusting. Ellie is more cautious, like me. They are incredible kids, Colt replied sincerely. Smart, funny, resilient. You've done an amazing job, Marianne. She smiled, and Colt noticed how her eyes lit up when she truly smiled. Thank you. I try to do the best I can. And when you get out of here, what are your plans? The question made her smile falter. I don't know yet. I'll need to find another job, of course. Something that allows me to take care of my health and the girls at the same time. It won't be easy, but... She shrugged. I'll find a way. I always do. Before Colt could respond, the girls returned from their tour, excited about what they had seen. The moment passed, but Marianne's words stayed with him. Later, driving back home with Ellie and Willa singing in the back seat, Colt thought about Marianne's story. Her strength, her determination, her dignity even in the most difficult moments. And he thought about himself, how he had lived for so long believing that success meant control, distance, power, how he had confused wealth with worth. An idea began to form in his mind, an idea that, just 2 weeks earlier, would have seemed absurd, impractical, too sentimental. Now it seemed like the only possible path. With Marianne's discharge scheduled for the following week, Colt realized he needed to prepare her home for her return. He had asked Rosa, Marianne's mother, if he could pick up some clothes to bring to the hospital, and the woman had given him the keys to the apartment. Don't be shocked by the mess, Rosa warned. Things got a bit neglected since she fell ill. On Saturday morning, Colt drove to Queens, intending to grab some comfortable clothes and perhaps sort through the bills that needed to be paid. The girls had stayed at the hospital with their grandmother, spending time with Marianne. He parked in front of the small brick building and climbed the 3 flights of stairs. This time, he noticed details he hadn't before. The unstable handrail, the worn steps, the peeling paint. The neighborhood wasn't dangerous, but the building was clearly suffering from years of deferred maintenance. Upon opening the apartment door, Colt was greeted by a smell of mold and spoiled food. The small living room, which had previously seemed merely simple and modest, now revealed clear signs of financial hardship. A sofa with torn upholstery in several places, patched with duct tape, a coffee table with one leg replaced by a stack of books, faded curtains hanging from a bent rod. The kitchen was in even worse shape. He opened the refrigerator and found few items, many of them expired. In the cabinet under the sink, he saw a bucket strategically placed to collect water from a leak. The cupboards held only a few packages of pasta, rice, and beans, basic foods that could be stretched for several meals. On the small counter next to the refrigerator, he found a pile of mail. He started to sort through it and soon realized the gravity of the situation. Electricity bills with shut-off notices, overdue rent, collection letters for loans, unpaid medical bills. Some dated from even before Marianne's dismissal, which meant she was already in financial trouble while still working for him. The girl's room was the only space that seemed to have been spared from the problems, small but organized, with 2 twin beds side by side. On the walls, colorful drawings and a few cartoon posters. The toys were few, but well cared for. A shoebox decorated with stickers contained colored pencils and school supplies, all used to their absolute limit. The pencils were tiny stubs that could barely be held. Marianne's room was Spartan, a simple double bed, a wardrobe with the door held shut by a string, a bedside table with a cracked lamp base. On the bed, a threadbare but impeccably clean comforter. On the wall, just one framed photo, Marianne with the 2 girls in a park, all of them smiling. It was in the bathroom that Colt found the most worrying signs of her illness. A laundry basket overflowing with blood-stained towels, likely from coughing fits. Several empty bottles of over-the-counter cough medicine. A doctor's prescription for antibiotics that was never filled, dated 2 weeks before her hospitalization. He sat on the edge of the bathtub, holding the prescription, and felt a lump in his throat. For 4 years, while he lived in his luxurious penthouse, demanding perfection, Marianne had been silently struggling to keep her family afloat. And when she needed understanding the most, when she was too sick to work regularly, he had fired her without a second thought. He returned to the living room and looked again at the pile of bills. A quick calculation showed that the debts totaled over $8,000, an insignificant amount for him, but clearly overwhelming for Marianne. On an impulse, he picked up the phone and called Reynolds, his assistant. "I need you to contact all these companies," he said, listing Marianne's creditors. "I want all these debts paid by the end of the day. And I want receipts for everything." "Yes, sir," Reynolds replied without question. "Anything else?" Colt looked around the apartment. "Yes. Hire a cleaning crew to be here in an hour, and a plumber, and wire someone who can fix furniture. Shall I send the design team from your summer residence?" "No," Colt replied after a moment's thought. "This is different. I need people who understand real repairs, not luxury decoration." After hanging up, Colt stood in the middle of the living room, absorbing the reality of Marianne's life. For 4 years, she had kept his home impeccable, always punctual, always efficient, while here, in her own home, she battled problems he couldn't even imagine. But what disturbed him most wasn't the poverty itself. It was knowing he could have helped at any time. A small raise, an occasional bonus, a more comprehensive health plan. Simple gestures that would have meant nothing to him, but could have completely changed her life. At the hospital that afternoon, Colt found Marianne sitting in an armchair near the window, with the girls by her side. She looked remarkably better, still thin, still pale, but stronger. "The doctor said I can go home on Tuesday," she announced as he entered. "That's amazing," Colt replied, hesitating. "But I think we need to make sure you have a suitable environment to recover in," Marianne frowned. "What do you mean?" "I went to your apartment today to pick up a few things." She immediately looked uncomfortable. "Oh, I'm sorry about the mess. Things got a little disorganized when I got sick." "Marianne," he said, sitting in the chair across from her, "I'm not judging, I just want to help." "Help how?" There was suspicion in her tone. "I'm taking care of the overdue bills," he said simply. Her eyes widened. "No, you can't do that. It's too much money. I'll find a way." "It's already done," he interrupted gently. "And it's not negotiable." Marianne glanced at her daughters, who were watching the conversation with curiosity. Can we talk about this later? Of course. But there's one more thing. Colt turned to the girls. Ellie, Willa, what do you think about helping me prepare a surprise for your mum when she comes home? The girls' eyes lit up. And what kind of surprise? Ellie asked. We're going to make your house beautiful and tidy. We can fix the broken things, clean everything, maybe buy some new things. Like a makeover from those TV shows, Willa exclaimed, excited. Something like that. Colt smiled. Marianne started to protest, but he interrupted her again. Think of it as an apology for everything. The next day, Colt picked up the girls early from the hospital. The plan was to spend Sunday preparing the apartment for Marianne's return. When they arrived, crews were already working. Plumbers fixing leaks, electricians checking the old wiring, carpenters repairing damaged furniture. Wow! Willa exclaimed at the sight of the activity. It's just like on TV. Colt had instructed everyone to maintain the character of the apartment. He didn't want a luxurious renovation that would strip away the home's identity, just necessary repairs and improvements to make the space functional and comfortable. What can we do to help? Asked Ellie, always practical. Thomas, how about we start by sorting what you want to keep and what we can replace? Colt suggested. The girls took the task seriously. Ellie, especially, had firm opinions about what her mother liked and valued. This vase was a gift from Grandma. We have to fix it, not throw it away. Mommy loves this picture, even with the broken frame. This blanket looks old, but it's special to her. Willa took charge of organizing the books and toys, stacking them carefully and setting aside the damaged ones. This one is my favorite, she said, holding up a teddy bear with a missing eye. How can you fix it? With a needle and thread one of the cleaners lent him, Colt helped Willa sew a new eye onto the bear. It was a clumsy job. He had never sewn anything in his life, but the girl's joy at seeing her toy healed was worth every prick on his finger. In the afternoon, Colt took the girls to buy new items for the house. He set clear limits. He didn't want to turn the modest home into something Marianne wouldn't recognize, or that would make her feel out of place in her own home. Together, they chose new sheets, soft towels, a few pots to replace the most worn ones, a colorful rug for the living room, and a set of simple but pretty dishes. Can we buy plants? Ellie asked. Their mummy loves plants, but they all died when she got sick. At the local market, they bought fresh food to fill the refrigerator and cupboards, fruits, vegetables, meat, dairy, healthy snacks for the girls. Colt noticed how Ellie automatically checked the prices of everything, something a 5-year-old normally wouldn't do. You don't have to worry about that today, he said gently. She looked at him with her serious eyes. Mommy always says to check the price of everything. Today is on me. Let's get what you really like. The wariness in her eyes gradually gave way to childish excitement as they filled the cart with items that would normally be unaffordable luxuries: breakfast cereals, hot chocolate, chocolate chip cookies. Back at the apartment, the transformations were already visible. The leak under the sink had been fixed, the walls painted, the furniture repaired or replaced where necessary. The duct-taped sofa had been reupholstered, the coffee table had a new leg, the faded curtains were replaced. In the kitchen, Colt and the girls organized the food in the now repaired cupboards. The refrigerator, which once held only a few expired items, was now full. The small stove had been cleaned until it shone. In the girls' room, the professionals had been careful to keep the original layout, only fixing what was broken and adding small touches: a new lamp, shelves for the books, a small chest for toys. Marianne's room received the same respectful treatment. The old bed was kept, but got a new mattress and soft bedding. The wardrobe was repaired, the lamp replaced. The photo on the wall received a new frame, and 2 other empty frames were added beside it, waiting for new memories. The bathroom was completely renovated. It was the space that needed the most repairs, with broken tiles and mold on the walls. Now it was clean, functional, with a shower that actually got hot and a sink that didn't leak. When all the professionals had finished and left, Colt and the girls added the final touches. Ellie decided where each new plant should go. Willa decorated the refrigerator with her drawings, held up by colorful magnets. Together, They organized the toiletries in the bathroom, hung clean towels, and made the beds with the new sheets. "Do you think Mommy will like it?" Willa asked, sitting on the newly upholstered sofa, hugging her teddy bear with the mended eye. "I'm sure she will," Colt replied, looking around. The apartment was still the same size, same layout, same address. But now it was a place where a family could live with dignity and comfort. It wasn't luxurious, nor did it need to be. It was adequate, functional, welcoming. Ellie approached him, her gaze serious again. "Why are you doing all this?" The question caught him off guard. How could he explain to a 5-year-old the whirlwind of emotions that motivated him? The guilt, the regret, the desire for amends, and something more, something new he couldn't quite name yet. "Because your mom deserves it," he answered simply. "And because I should have helped a long time ago." Ellie nodded, as if the answer made perfect sense to her. "She worked really hard for you." "Yes, she did. And I never properly acknowledged it." That night, after taking the girls back to his penthouse, Colt stayed awake, thinking about the day. He had spent a considerable amount on repairs, new items, paying off debts, but it was money he wouldn't even miss. For Marianne, however, it meant a new beginning, free from immediate worries, in an environment where she could properly recover. But more important than the money spent was the transformation he felt within himself. For the first time in his adult life, he had done something completely altruistic, not for recognition, not for strategic advantage, not for personal gain, just because it was the right thing to do. And the most surprising thing was how good it made him feel. Not just temporarily, like when he closed a big deal or acquired something expensive, but in a deep and lasting way. It was as if a door he never knew existed had been opened inside him, revealing possibilities he had never considered. On Tuesday, Marianne would be discharged and would return home. Colt could already imagine her expression when she saw the transformations. But beyond the physical changes in the apartment, there were the less visible changes, in Ellie and Willa, who now smiled more easily, and in himself, who was finally beginning to see the world beyond the walls he had built around himself. This gesture, repairing a house, paying debts, filling a refrigerator, might seem small in the grand scheme of his privileged life. But for Colt, it was a turning point. The moment he finally understood that his wealth and power only had true value when used to make a difference in the lives of others. And that understanding, once reached, would forever change the way he saw the world around him. The day of the hospital discharge arrived with a blue sky and bright sun, as if nature itself was celebrating Marianne's return home. Colt took the girls to the hospital early, where they found Marianne already dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed, waiting for the final paperwork. "We're ready for you, Mommy," Willa announced, barely able to contain her excitement. "Doctor." Larson entered, smiling as he saw the family reunited. "Well, Miss Miller, your recovery has been remarkable. You'll still need to rest and continue with the antibiotics for another 2 weeks, but you're free to go home." Marianne thanked the doctor and the nursing staff who had cared for her. When they finally left the hospital, she took a deep breath, savoring the fresh air. "I missed this," she commented, closing her eyes for a moment. In the car, the girls could hardly sit still, anxious for their mother's reaction. Ellie had made Colt promise not to say anything about the changes to the apartment. "It's a surprise, Mommy," Willa explained when Marianne asked why they were so restless. When they arrived at the building, Colt helped Marianne up the stairs. Still weak from the long hospital stay, she had to stop a few times to catch her breath. "Sorry about the stairs," she said. "The elevator has been broken for months." "Not today," Colt replied with a small smile. "It's working perfectly." Marianne looked at him in surprise, but before she could ask, Ellie pulled her towards the newly repaired elevator. At the apartment door, the girls positioned themselves strategically. Ellie held her mother's hand, while Willa stood next to Colt. "Close your eyes," Ellie instructed. Marianne obeyed, smiling. Colt unlocked the door and the girls guided her inside. "You can open them now," they exclaimed in unison. Marianne opened her eyes and froze. For a moment, she thought they had entered the wrong apartment. The once worn and gloomy space was now bright, clean, and organized. The furniture she knew was there, but repaired, renewed. There were plants in the corners, new curtains on the windows, and a pleasant aroma of something freshly baked. "What?" she began, but the words failed her. "We fixed everything for you, Mommy," Willa explained, bouncing with excitement. "Ellie and I helped." "And it was Colt's idea," Ellie added, looking at him with admiration. Marianne walked slowly through the living room, touching the furniture as if she couldn't believe it was real. The sofa, where she had so often fallen asleep exhausted, was now firm and comfortable. The coffee table she had found on the street and propped up with books now had 4 solid legs. In the kitchen, she opened the refrigerator and found it stocked with fresh food. The cupboards were organized, the stove clean, the sink no longer leaking. You fixed everything," she murmured, still in shock. In the girls' room, she found the beds made with new sheets, the toys organized, the books on shelves. She recognized every item, nothing had been discarded, only restored and organized. Her own room maintained the same simplicity she had always valued, but now with small touches of comfort. A new mattress, soft bedding, the repaired wardrobe. In the bathroom, she couldn't hold back tears. The space that had been a source of so much frustration, with its constant faults and problems, was now completely renewed. She returned to the living room, where Colt and the girls eagerly awaited her reaction. I don't know what to say," she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. "Did you like it, Mommy?" Willa asked, worried by her tears. "I love it, sweetie." Marianne knelt to hug her daughters. "It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received." She looked at Colt over the girls' heads. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did," he replied simply. The following weeks were a period of adjustment and recovery. Marianne followed the doctor's recommendations to the letter, resting plenty and taking her medication. The girls went back to school, and Rosa, Marianne's mother, helped with household chores when needed. Colt visited almost daily, always bringing something, sometimes food, sometimes a book, sometimes just his presence. He never stayed for too long, respecting Marianne's space and recovery time, but it was clear that he cared. A month after her discharge, Marianne was almost fully recovered. The color had returned to her face, her breathing was normal, and her energy was beginning to come back. Sitting on the living room sofa, she was flipping through a newspaper, looking for job ads when the doorbell rang. It was Colt, carrying a folder. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything," he said. "Not at all. The girls are at school, and I was just—" She hesitated, not wanting to mention her job search. "Looking for work," he completed. She nodded. "I need to get back out there soon. The bills don't stop coming, even with your generosity." Colt sat in the armchair across from her. "Actually, that's what I came to talk about." Marianne sat up straighter, tense. Over the years, she had learned to recognize when an important conversation was about to happen. "I want to offer you your old job back," Colt said directly. Marianne blinked, surprised. "My job? At your house?" "Yes, but with different conditions." He opened the folder and handed her some documents. "The salary would be this. The hours would be flexible. You could bring the girls when needed, especially during school holidays or when they're sick." Marianne looked at the numbers on the contract and almost choked. It was more than double what she used to make. "This is very generous, but there's more," Colt continued. "The guest house at the back of the property is empty. It has 3 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, a completely separate space from the main house. It would be yours, at no extra cost." Marianne stared at him, speechless. The guest house he mentioned was almost a small mansion compared to her tiny apartment. She had cleaned that space a few times for special guests, always admiring its simple elegance, and the girls would have free access to the gardens, the pool, the library, the entire grounds, really. "I have too much space for one person." "Why are you doing this?" she finally asked, her voice low. Colt was silent for a moment, choosing his words. "Let's just say I had an epiphany. I spent my whole life believing that success meant just accumulating more money, more power, more control. I never bothered to look around to see who was being left behind." He looked out the window at the blue sky, finding you and the girls on that bus. "It was like someone slapped me in the face and said, 'Wake up.' I saw up close how people struggle, how the system fails them, How a little help at the right time can make all the difference. He looked back at her. I'm not offering charity. I really do need someone to manage the house, and you were excellent at your job. The difference is that now I want it to be on fair terms, a proper salary, conditions that allow you to care for your daughters, and the respect you've always deserved. Marianne felt a lump in her throat. For the first time in her adult life, someone was offering not just a job but dignity, not just a salary but stability, not just work but a real chance to balance her professional and family life. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course, Colt replied, standing up. Take all the time you need. That night, after the girls were asleep, Marianne reread the proposal several times. The doubts were many. Would it be strange to go back to work for Colt after everything that had happened? Would the girls adapt well to such a big change? Was Colt just trying to compensate for his guilt? But the advantages were undeniable. The salary would solve all her financial problems. The guest house would provide a safe and comfortable space for the girls to grow up in. The flexibility would allow her to be present when her daughters needed her. The next morning, she called Colt. I accept, she said simply. But on one condition. What is it? He asked. I want it to be clear that I'm not just an employee. I'm a person with needs and responsibilities. If I ever need to miss a day because one of the girls is sick. I completely understand, Colt interrupted. In fact, that's explicitly stated in the contract. Your priority is your daughters, always. The job comes second. When she told the girls about the move, the reactions were mixed. Willa jumped for joy at the thought of living in a house with a garden and a pool. Ellie, always more cautious, was concerned. Are we going to have to change schools? She asked. No, sweetie, Marianne assured her. We'll stay at the same school. The commute will just be a little different. And can we bring our toys? All of them. And you'll have much more space to play. The following Sunday, they went to see the guest house. Colt was waiting for them at the gate of the impressive Long Island estate, a world away from the small apartment in Queens. The girls were momentarily intimidated by the size of the place, but Colt's gentle smile soon put them at ease. Come, I want to show you where you'll be living, he said, leading them down a stone path that wound through well-tended gardens. The guest house was about 100 yards from the main mansion, partially hidden by mature trees that provided privacy. It was an elegant two-story structure, with a small porch and large windows. Inside, the space was even more charming, polished hardwood floors, walls in soft tones, simple but quality furniture. The living room had a fireplace, the kitchen was compact but complete, and the upstairs bedrooms were spacious and airy. This would be your room, Colt said, opening a door for the girls. I thought you might prefer to stay together, but there's another room if you want separate spaces. The room was large enough for 2 beds, a bookshelf, and a play area. The windows overlooked the garden, and in the distance you could see the pool sparkling under the sun. This is bigger than our whole house, Willa exclaimed, running from one side to the other, exploring every corner. Ellie was more reserved, but her eyes shone as she examined the room. Can we really live here? If your mother agrees, of course, Colt replied. Marianne was speechless. The place was perfect, close enough to the main mansion for work, but far enough to maintain her family's privacy. After seeing the house, Colt took them on a tour of the grounds. There were flower beds, fruit trees, a vegetable garden, and, to the girls' delight, a small playground with swings and a slide. I had it installed last week, Sammy explained, watching Willa run immediately to the swings. I thought you might like it. You've thought of everything, Marianne commented, watching her daughters play. I tried, he replied simply. 3 weeks later, the move was complete. The Miller family's few possessions fit easily into a small truck. Colt insisted on buying new furniture to complete the house, but Marianne made sure to keep some special items. The dining table where the girls did their homework, the rocking chair where she used to rock them as babies, the antique chest that had belonged to her grandmother. The first official day of work arrived. Marianne dropped the girls off at school and drove to the mansion. Colt had given her a used but perfectly functional car to make her commute easier. She felt strangely nervous, as if it were her first job. Reynolds, Colt's assistant, greeted her at the entrance. Welcome back, Miss Miller. Mr. Harlan is in his office, but he asked me to show you the changes in the house. The changes were subtle but significant. There was now a small office adjacent to the kitchen, equipped with a computer and phone, designated specifically for her. So you can manage the household and stay in touch with the girls, Reynolds explained. The staff room where she occasionally rested during long shifts had been transformed into a small sitting area, with a comfortable sofa and television. For when the girls need to stay here while you work, Reynolds said. And perhaps the most surprising change, there were new photos on the walls of the house. Not just the usual abstract art that had always decorated the place, but real photographs of people. One of them, in the main hallway, showed Ellie and Willa smiling in the garden. Colt appeared as Reynolds was finishing the tour. "What do you think of the changes?" "They're perfect casts," Marianne replied, still processing everything. "You thought of details I wouldn't have even imagined." "I've learned the importance of details from you three," he said. "The little things that make a space a home." In the following weeks, a new routine was established. Marianne supervised the cleaning and maintenance of the mansion, now with the help of other staff Colt had hired. Her responsibilities were more managerial than hands-on, a tacit promotion she deeply appreciated. The girls flourished in the new environment. After school, they would run to the garden, exploring every corner, creating hideouts among the bushes, inventing stories under the old trees. On weekends, they swam in the pool under their mother's watchful eye. On a particularly sunny Sunday, 2 months after the move, Colt found Marianne sitting in the garden, watching her daughters play near the small ornamental pond. "They seem happy," he commented, sitting on the bench next to her. "They are," Marianne confirmed. "I've never seen them so free, so childlike." "And you," Marianne reflected for a moment. "I'm happy too. It's strange, you know, working for you again, but in such a different way." "Different how?" "Before, I was invisible. I did my job, tried not to be noticed, not to be a bother. Now I feel like I'm seen, as a person, not just as an employee." Colt nodded, understanding. "I was a terrible boss." "Not the worst," she corrected, smiling slightly. "Just distant. And now, Marianne looked at the girls, who were laughing as they fed the pond fish with small crumbs of bread. "Now I feel like we're all learning something new. Me about trust, you about seeing, the girls about belonging." They sat in silence for a moment, just watching Ellie and Willa play. The afternoon sun cast a golden light over the garden, making the flowers seem even more vibrant, the grass greener, the sky bluer. Colt stood up. "I almost forgot. I brought something for you." He went back to the house and returned with a small bouquet of wildflowers, daisies, small sunflowers, lavender. "From the other side of the property. I thought you might like to put them on the dining table." Marianne accepted the flowers, touched by the simplicity of the gesture. "They're beautiful. Thank you." He smiled and walked towards the girls, who greeted him with excitement, wanting to show him the fish they had discovered. Watching the scene, Colt kneeling by the pond, listening intently as Ellie explained something about the fish, Willa hanging on his shoulder, Marianne felt a peace she hadn't known in years. This place, which had once been just a job, was now a home. This man, who had once been just a boss, was now something different. Not quite a friend, not quite family, but someone who cared, who saw, who understood. And for Colt, the transformation was equally profound. His mansion, once a sterile and silent space, was now full of life. Children's laughter echoed through the gardens. Small footprints marked the stone paths. Colorful drawings occasionally appeared on his desk, shy gifts from the girls. For the first time, the place had life. It had purpose. It had meaning. Autumn had given way to winter, and winter to spring. Almost 6 months had passed since Colt found Ellie and Willa on that bus with their handmade sign. 6 months that had transformed his life in ways he could never have predicted. On that Saturday morning, Colt woke up later than usual. There were no urgent meetings, no international calls, no pressing deadlines. In recent months, he had deliberately slowed down his professional pace. He was still the CEO of Harlan Enterprises, still made important decisions, still managed his empire, but now there was room for more. As he went down to the kitchen, he found evidence that he was no longer alone in the house. A half-empty glass of juice in the sink, toast crumbs on the counter, a small, colourful sock forgotten under a chair. He smiled at these traces of life. Before, any sign of disorder would have bothered him deeply. Now, every evidence of the girl's presence was welcome. He walked to the window and saw Ellie sitting under a tree, engrossed in a book. The girl, who would soon turn 6, had developed a passion for stories. Colt had converted one of the empty rooms in the mansion into a small children's library, filling it with books carefully selected for her age. "Good morning," said Marianne, entering the kitchen with a basket of clean laundry. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in a long time," he replied sincerely. "Willa is looking for you. She wants to show you the science experiment she's doing in the garden. Something about beetles and a miniature city." Colt smiled. "I better go check before we have an insect invasion." "Too late," Marianne laughed. "I already found 3 ladybugs in my room last night." These small morning conversations had become part of the routine. Nothing deep, nothing complicated, just the daily rhythm of people sharing a space, sharing their lives. In the garden, he found Willa kneeling on the grass, focused on an elaborate construction of twigs, leaves, and small stones. "Good morning, scientist," he greeted. Willa looked up, her face instantly lighting up. "Colt, look what I made. It's a city for the beetles. It has houses and schools and even a hospital in case they get sick." He knelt beside her, observing the incredible attention to detail the 4-year-old had put into her creation. "This is amazing, Willa. How did you come up with this idea? You said everyone deserves a good place to live, remember? I thought the beetles did too." Colt felt something tighten in his chest. It was like this now. Small observations from the girls often hit him with unexpected force. They absorbed everything, processed it all in their own unique way, and gave it back to the world with a clarity that often left him speechless. "You are absolutely right," he said finally. "The beetles deserve one too." They spent the next half hour perfecting the Beetle City, with Willa excitedly explaining each new addition, while Colt listened attentively, asking occasional questions that made her think of new details. This was what he had discovered in recent months, the power of simply being present, of truly listening, of participating in the small moments that, when added up, made a real life. Before his days were measured in achievements, in milestones reached, in money accumulated. Now, it was the small gestures that brought meaning, helping Ellie with a difficult word in her reading, cheering when Willa managed to ride her bike without training wheels for the first time, noticing when Marianne looked tired and making her a cup of tea. Later that day, while Marianne took the girls to visit their grandmother Rosa, Colt took advantage of the time alone to check some work emails. Reynolds had sent several urgent reports that required his attention. Years ago, he would have spent the entire weekend poring over those documents, ignoring the world around him. Now, he finished the essential tasks in 2 hours, leaving the rest for Monday. He had learned that the corporate world rarely had genuine emergencies, only manufactured urgencies by people who, like he used to be, confused work with life. When the 3 returned in the late afternoon, Colt was in the kitchen trying, without much success, to bake cookies from a recipe he had found online. "What happened here?" Marianne asked, looking at the flour scattered all over the counter. "An experiment," he replied, mimicking the tone Willa used for her garden creations. "Just a failed experiment by the looks of it," commented Ellie, critically eyeing the shapeless dough on the baking sheet. "Totally failed," Colt agreed, laughing. "Who knew baking cookies was so complicated?" "Everybody," Willa replied with the brutal honesty of small children. "I can teach you," Marianne offered, already rolling up her sleeves. "Girls, wash your hands. Let's show Colt how it's done." The next hour was spent in the kitchen, with Marianne patiently explaining each step, the girls helping to measure ingredients, and Colt watching with genuine admiration at the ease with which they worked together. It was like a well-rehearsed dance, each knowing her role, moving in sync. "How did you get so good at this?" he asked, as Marianne demonstrated how to form the cookies perfectly. "Practice," she replied simply. We used to make cookies on weekends when I wasn't working. It was cheap and kept the girls entertained. Again, Colt was reminded of how different Marianne's life had been from his. While he spent fortunes on elaborate experiences he barely appreciated, she found joy in the simplest things: an afternoon baking cookies, a walk in the park, a story before bed. And the most surprising thing was that the more time he spent with them, the more he realized that Marianne and the girls weren't the only ones who had gained something from this new arrangement. He too was receiving an invaluable gift, the chance to experience a genuine, connected, meaningful life. It wasn't romance. It had never been about that. It was about presence, about belonging, about filling a void he didn't even know existed until he started to feel it disappear. After dinner, while the girls were taking a bath, Colt and Marianne sat on the porch that connected the main house to the guest house. The twilight painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, and the cool spring air carried the scent of freshly bloomed flowers. "You seem different," Marianne commented, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "How so?" "More present, less in your own world." Colt reflected on the observation. "I don't think I ever knew how to be present before. I was always thinking about the next goal, the next achievement, never really here." "The girls are good teachers in that regard," Marianne smiled. "Children live in the present. They don't worry about the future or the past." "It's not just them," Colt replied, looking at her directly. "You also teach by example. I've never met anyone so capable of being fully in the moment, even in difficult circumstances." Marianne seemed surprised by the compliment. "It's just what mothers do, I guess. We don't have the luxury of getting lost in thoughts or worries. There's always someone needing immediate attention." "It's more than that," he insisted. "It's a quality you have, a strength." She looked down, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. She had never been good at receiving compliments. The girls soon joined them on the porch, in their pajamas with damp hair. Willa immediately climbed into Colt's lap, a familiarity that now seemed completely natural. Ellie sat next to Marianne, who picked up a blanket she had been knitting for the past few weeks. "Tell a story, Colt," Willa requested, snuggling against his chest. "What kind of story do you want?" "One about dragons," Willa suggested. "No, about explorers," countered Ellie. "Tarsi, how about one about explorers who find a dragon?" Colt suggested, making them both smile. As he narrated an improvised story about two brave sisters who discover an injured dragon in a magical forest and help it find its way back home, Colt watched the girls' reactions. Willa listened with wide eyes, completely immersed in the fantasy. Ellie, more analytical, occasionally asked questions about the story's details. Marianne continued her work on the blanket, her hands moving with grace and precision, the soft sound of the needles forming a soothing rhythm under Colt's words. When the story ended, the girls clapped enthusiastically, and then, surprisingly, Willa yawned. "I think it's time for two explorers to go to bed," said Marianne, putting away her knitting. "Just 5 more minutes," Willa pleaded. "Tomorrow, you can look for dragons in the garden," Colt promised. "Now, it's time to rest." After goodnight kisses and warm hugs, Marianne took the girls inside. Colt remained on the porch, watching the starry sky. A few minutes later, Marianne returned, resuming her seat and her work on the colorful blanket. "They fall asleep fast when they're really tired," she commented. They sat in silence for a while, but it wasn't an uncomfortable or empty silence. It was a full silence, full of thoughts, feelings, mutual understanding. The kind of silence that only exists between people who feel completely at ease in each other's presence. Colt watched Marianne knitting, her hands moving confidently through the complex pattern. The blanket was an explosion of colors, blues, reds, yellows, greens, all intertwined in a design that seemed chaotic at first glance, but revealed a surprising harmony when observed for longer. "It's like us," he said softly. "What is?" Marianne asked, looking up from her work. "The blanket. Different colors, different patterns that somehow work together." She studied her work for a moment, as if seeing it from a new perspective. "I suppose so. I didn't plan it this way. I just kept adding what felt right at the moment." "Sometimes the best patterns are the ones we don't plan," Colt reflected. The night wore on, and the city lights in the distance created a sparkling horizon against the dark sky. The silence between them remained comfortable, filled only by the soft sound of Marianne's needles and the occasional whisper of the wind in the trees. Colt felt a peace he had never experienced before. His previous world was dominated by noise, literal and figurative. The constant buzz of notifications, the hum of meetings, the roar of his own ambition. Now there was room for silence, and in that silence, he could finally hear what really mattered. Marianne and the girls had filled a void in his life he didn't even know existed. Not with noise, not with demands, not with complications, but with presence, with the simple art of being, of belonging. He looked at Marianne, focused on her work, her face serene in the soft porch light. He thought of the girls sleeping peacefully inside, of their lives intertwined with his in ways he could never have predicted. For the first time in his adult life, Colt Harlan felt like he belonged. Not to the business world, not to the exclusive circle of the ultra-rich, not to the headlines of financial magazines, but to this small universe of 4 people, built not with contracts and transactions, but with small moments of kindness, of understanding, of genuine presence. And in that moment, he knew with absolute certainty that all his fortune, his entire empire, all his achievements, none of it was worth as much as this simple act of being present, truly present, in the lives of people who now mattered more than anything else. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.